Okay, so I've been hearing that whoever shot Charlie Kirk was a Republican, and I've also been hearing that whoever shot Charlie Kirk was not a Republican and was simply assumed to be or accused of being not sure exactly what. But I'm going to see what a quick Google search tells me here. So, was Charlie Kirk shooter a Republican? Let's see what comes up here. Let's see, there's a fact check. Top stories, NPR, what we know about the accused shooter. It says down here that he's been labeled a leftist. Okay. Tyler Robinson's been arrested. That is the name I've been seeing. That's the picture I've been seeing also. So they have him in custody. He's the suspected shooter. This is from 3 days ago. All right, so we're going to assume that it is Tyler Robinson. The question is Tyler Robinson a Republican or not? So, or are they saying that it's someone other than Tyler Robinson who is the shooter? Who is this person they're saying is a Republican? Let's start with this fact check here. Fact check, is Charlie Kirk's shooting suspect a registered Republican who donated to Trump? Skip here. He got arrested. Public news. One X post identified a $225 donation to Trump's 2020 presidential campaign from a Tyler Robinson in St. George, Utah, but that's a different Tyler Robinson than the suspect according to records. That's interesting. I don't know what the source for this is. This article could, I suppose, theoretically be made by a right-winger or by anybody really, who's misrepresenting the facts, but they're saying right here that it's a different Tyler Robinson. Which Tyler Robinson sounds like kind of a generic name, so wouldn't surprise me, but who knows. Alright. Federal election records show that a person with that name in St. George contributed a certain amount of money to the campaign. As of the date of the donation, the Robinson who is the suspect would have been 17 years old. People who are 17 can legally donate to candidates under certain conditions, but we did not find donations in federal records from the suspect. By the way, this is WRAL.com. I haven't heard of this. This is the first time I'm seeing this. So I'm not familiar with this news organization. I don't know where it leans politically. I know there are apps that'll tell you this, though, but I don't have them. And that's part of the fun of this, right? I'm not someone who's coming to you as an expert. I'm just an average, everyday person trying to figure this out like you. So the fact that I don't know this stuff, I feel like is kind of a benefit so that you can see my thought process. All right, there's a picture of him. No evidence that Robinson is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Users have shared a photo of a man they allege is him wearing a shirt that says Salt Lake DSA. Before Robinson was confirmed as the suspect, some users on social media shared the same photo and identified the man as Jack Bellows. Bellows describes himself as a community organizer and is running for Salt Lake City Council. Okay. All right. At the press conference, it would be cool to see if this was on YouTube. If that's on YouTube and I haven't seen it, please someone let me know. I might go check that out. But at the press conference, Cox announced the specific text etched on a 4-bullet casing found with a Mauser Model 98. I'm not reading all that, but a specific type of rifle. And it had... Okay, so the rifle had some stuff etched into this. Oh, whoa. Hey, fascist, catch. If you read this, you're gay, LMAO. All right, these phrases unleashed speculation about their meaning. Some users familiar with video game culture zeroed in on potential sources, with many of them couched in layers of irony and sarcasm. According to the website Know Your Meme, the phrase "notices bulges, oh whoa, what's this?" has been circulating online since at least 2013, particularly to parody subcultures, online role-playing subcultures, including furries. Hey Fascist Catch seems to indicate that the person who fired the weapon was someone on the political left as opposed to fascism. However, ex-users said the phrase and the arrow sequence comes from the game Helldivers 2, which envisions battles involving fascist uniformed fighters. A move in that game that involves pressing a series of arrows allows the player to drop a bomb. By the way, for those of you who are listening and not reading, I'm not reading everything that's on the page. So if you want clear understanding of what's actually being said, please take a look at the screen. I'm just reading what seems the most relevant, and if you're just listening and not looking, I don't want you to come away with any misunderstandings or false ideas about what is actually written down here. So just a heads up. These don't seem to be messages intended to be essentially private sigils, an expression of private rage from the shooter to Charlie Kirk, Phillips said. There seems to be a further aim of maximum publicity, specifically publicity aimed to arouse the strongest possible responses in as many audiences as possible. Yeah, could be. I mean, trolls exist. You know, there are people who like to just piss people off and get people worked up. So if you're seeing something that's way too good to be true in terms of how awful he is, yeah, maybe that's what it is. But okay, so let's see if there's an actual conclusion on this. Fact check, is Charlie Kirk shooting a suspect? Okay, so it does not seem to be giving us a clear stance about whether he's right-wing or not. Let's take a look out at something else. What we know about the accused shooter. I'm going to click on this one because of the quote leftist. Alright, they've labeled the accused shooter of Charlie Kirk a leftist, but extremism analysts say the only clear indication so far is that he was deeply into online meme culture. So where are people getting the idea that he's a Republican from? Is it just from the fact that there was donations sent by Tyler Robinson, or is there some other reason why people are saying that he was a Republican? I haven't heard. I'm still looking into all this. You're seeing this fresh as I'm searching it up. If you can shed light, either if you're one of the people who thinks that the shooter was a Republican or right-wing, or if you at least have heard people express why they think that, please let me know. Leave a comment so that we can see what the types of logic is. So far from what I'm seeing, looks like it's literally just memes that seem to be right-wing and some guy named with the same name who donated to Trump in this past election campaign. So, where are they getting this from? He was raised in a publican home. Let's see, this is from Facebook, the New York Times. The man accused of shooting Charlie Kirk was raised in a Republican home. Yet, that does not mean much. Just because you were raised in a home where your parents or where one of your parents had a certain view, that doesn't mean that you're going to have the same views. I don't like Facebook. I'm going to click on it anyway. Here we go. Let's just click on the actual article. There we go. From scholarship winner to the wanted man, the path of the Kirk shooting suspect. And this came out, when did this come out? Today is Friday, September 19th? Yeah, Friday, September 19th. He grew up in a conservative southern city. He grew up with neighbors and classmates who described him as reserved and raised Republican family. Alright, so As elements of the nation's political left and right scramble for motives, the image that initially emerged is not all that clear. He was quiet. Mr. Robinson is registered to vote in Utah, but he is not affiliated with a political party and had never voted in an election, according to the Washington County Clerk. His parents are registered Republicans, both with active hunting licenses. So, okay, maybe this is wrong. Maybe he is a Republican and this article is not giving us factual information. But this should, I mean, this definitely causes doubts. In my mind, this makes it seem like, again, maybe I'm missing something, but this makes it seem like there is no real reason to believe he's a Republican. Just people said he was. So, okay, we've got more information now, more of a possible case to why he was a Republican. Potential right-wing memes. Someone named Tyler Robinson had donated to Trump's campaign in 2020, and his parents were registered Republican. But we're also seeing that apparently he didn't vote. Let's see. Police officer wrote an affidavit. Mr. Robinson's family members described him as growing more political in recent years. Okay, that happens. I was apolitical until the 2016 election cycle when I was 19 years old. And so I've developed a political set of opinions since then. Makes sense, you're old enough to vote. Now you're starting to think a little more about politics. Just stuff about his personality and people who knew him. Alright, let's see. At the time of the shooting, he seemed to have been living with at least one roommate in an apartment complex in St. George, 10-minute drive from his family's home. He was a third-year student. He never talked to anybody, blasting music with his roommate. He was acting pretty strange, acting nervous and scared. When was that? Was that before or after the shooting? Not sure. But yeah, we have more information here, and essentially that information is his parents are registered Republican, and he's never voted, and he's not registered with a specific party. So where does the idea that he is right-wing, where does the idea that he is a Republican, where does that actually come from? And if there is a case to be made that he very well might be right-wing, is there enough evidence that it justifies stating things factually? Because here's the thing. Any reasonable person, especially if you're, say, like, teenager to adult, you should realize that sometimes the things you believe are wrong. That's normal. We all should acknowledge that. The question is, how cautious should we be that our beliefs are wrong? And I think that a lot of people, while they may change their mind when faced with new information, are a little too confident in their opinions that they would end up later changing their mind and realizing they're wrong. And I wish that instead of stating things as if they're facts and then changing our mind when we find out we're wrong, if we could just start with humility to begin with and not state our opinions as if they're facts, but make it clear that this is our understanding. I spoke with a very nice older gentleman at Starbucks a couple days ago. We had a little conversation about politics and a little bit about religion and morality. He says that he doesn't really affiliate himself with a particular side of the political spectrum. He identifies as a Christian. He was a black man, and he seemed to kind of have a view that aligns. I don't know if he exactly believes in critical race theory, but he expressed some level of belief in the idea that, like, society as a whole is maybe not so fair towards black people in modern day America. which, while he says he doesn't fall to one side of the political spectrum or another, that indicates to me that he maybe is a little more left-leaning. May not be the case, but he asked me what I thought about the Charlie Kirk shooting. And I told him, and I made a video about this too. I told him that I wasn't particularly a fan of Charlie Kirk's, never really watched his stuff, but I think it's wrong that he was killed, and I think it's wrong that people are celebrating his death. And he told me something along the lines of like, Charlie Kirk is a racist, he was bigoted, and I told him, I'm like, maybe that's true. I haven't looked into Charlie Kirk, so I don't know. So I just kind of like, I try to concede as much ground and be like, yeah, maybe you're right. But the way that I see it, especially as someone who's right-wing, a lot of people who are on the right, are often accused of bigotry where there's no real evidence of bigotry. I mean, there are real bigots out there, but it has been both my lived experience and the lived experience of, I later discovered, many other people, not just myself, that there are a lot of people who will take little things about you and assume much more about you based on those little things than they should, in such a way that it leads them to conclude that you're bigoted. Who you're bigoted against depends on the nature of the conversation, who you're talking to, what you're talking about, or just anything they learn about you in general. But it could be homophobia, transphobia, racism, misogyny, you name it. And it's not uncommon. Like, most people may not be making these assumptions that someone is a bigot because they hold either a right-wing or a Christian perspective on things. And I'm Christian, by the way, also, so I've experienced it from that angle as well. However, even if it's a small percentage of people that make these accusations without evidence, I would wager that a very large percentage of people are on the receiving end of it. Like, essentially a small number of perpetrators, a large number of people on the receiving end of that perpetuation. So when I heard him say, and this goes for anybody, talking about Charlie Kirk, again, I haven't watched his stuff really, I don't know much about him. But when I hear people saying that Charlie Kirk was a racist or whatever it is, to me, I'm thinking that's probably unlikely. This is most likely something that's been taken out of context. And I forget where he said it, but at some point during our conversation, he said, that's a fact. I don't think it was about the politics. It was about something else. But essentially what I got is that this kind man, who was open-minded, who was civil, who had a conversation with me and listened to me politely even when we disagreed on politics, even he, as an older man, he was 53, I think, even he had this level of certainty when he spoke about Charlie Kirk that didn't seem warranted to me. And if I run into him again and the opportunity comes up to have this conversation, I might challenge him on this a bit. But I was thinking, I know this isn't just me who does this, but I don't know how common it is. But sometimes what I do is I have these hypothetical conversations in my mind with real people based on conversations that I've already had. And one of the conversations I was having in my imagination with this guy was me challenging him on whether or not the shooter was a Republican. And essentially the way this conversation went is we determined together that we couldn't know for sure whether the shooter was right-wing or not. Or maybe even that there was some evidence that this was someone who was left-wing. And what I thought to him in my mind, and I think this is a good point to get across to you, is, and I said this a little earlier in the video, but I'm going to say it again here. Essentially, it's good to be open-minded, and it's good to admit that you're wrong when faced with evidence that you were wrong. But I wish we didn't get ourselves into these situations where we confidently state things that turn out to be wrong to begin with. So, let's say that I am one of those people who thinks that the shooter is right-wing. What I try to do, this is something that's taken quite a bit of practice, but I'm pretty good at it these days. I'm always working on it, though. What I would try to do is use words to qualify the limitation on my knowledge. I would say things like, I've heard that the shooter is right-wing. I've heard that the shooter is Republican. Or, it's my understanding that it's a Republican shooter. Or, I'm pretty sure it's a Republican shooter. Or I might even make it as a question if it came up in conversation, like, isn't the shooter a Republican? Just to give the person I'm talking to an opportunity to say whether or not they think that's true. And it gives them room to push back. And essentially, just when I communicate my opinions, when I state my perspectives, even if it's something that I believe to be probably, certainly, like almost, like positively true, I still try to give qualifiers that indicate the limitations of my knowledge. I try to say where I get it from. I try to say it is my understanding, or from the people that I watch on YouTube who seem like qualified professionals, or I'm pretty sure, things like that. Or apparently. I use the word apparently a lot. I think that when it comes to this issue, any issue really, but we're talking about Charlie Kirk's shooter right now, let's just try to have a little humility. Like, I'm not saying don't say he was a Republican because the facts haven't all come out yet. Like, yeah, that's true, but I think we can still talk about things even if we don't know for certain all the details. I don't think we have to stay quiet just because we can't say for certain that we're correct. But let's try to be humble in how we talk about this. Let's say, I'm pretty sure that he was a racist, that Charlie Kirk was a racist. Or I've seen things that seem racist to me, and I have a very hard time understanding how that could have been taken out of context. Saying things like that. Just not shying away from sharing your view on things. Not saying, well, I guess I just don't know what I'm talking about. But just communicating in a way that shows that maybe you are communicating in a way that shows that you realize that you might be wrong. That's all. I mean, also, if you're one of those people who just doesn't admit when you're wrong, if you're one of those people who just digs your heels in and you just won't hear it for the other side, that's a problem. But this channel's for truth seekers. I'm not here to berate someone who doesn't want to change. I'm not here to berate someone who's toxic and closed-minded and doesn't want to ever think about this. They just want to believe whatever they want to believe regardless of the evidence. I'm here talking to you. And maybe this is something you already do, and that's fantastic. I hope that I'm motivating you and empowering you in some way to keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a good job. But I suspect that some of you who are watching this are people who want to do the right thing, are people who want to be the best people you can be, and that you just, like, you're working on it. You're growing. You're on your personal journey of self-growth. And what I'd ask you is, in any situation, if you realize you could be wrong, be upfront about it in some way. How you do it is up to you. The exact word choice you use to communicate nuance is something you can experiment with, something you can think about. Again, I love words like apparently and in my understanding, or I heard/read in this place. But, you can figure it out yourself. But what I'm asking you to do is, when it comes to issues where you have an opinion, but you haven't looked super deeply, or if you have looked super deeply, but you still see there's gaps in your knowledge, try to avoid stating things with confidence, only to later change your mind when you're wrong. I would encourage you and ask you to please just start with that nuance to begin with. Why admit that you were wrong? Why ever be wrong to begin with? Why not just express things as you see them in a way that's not actually stating things in a factual manner. You'll be wrong less often. You'll look a lot smarter. So there's personal motivation there too, other than just trying to be a better person. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. Basic summary. It seems that we don't know what Charlie Kirk's shooter's political views were. We know that he grew up in a Republican home. Or I guess I should say we don't know that. To use the nuance to practice this myself, according to the sources that we looked at together. His parents were Republicans. He's a registered voter, but hasn't voted yet, and isn't affiliated with any specific party. He had memes that seemed kind of right-wing-ish, and what else did we talk about here? Someone with his same name, who supposedly wasn't actually him, had donated to Trump's campaign in the 2020 election cycle, when Tyler Robinson would have been 17, which I think we read that he's 22 now, so if it's 25, that's 5 years ago, 22 minus 5, yeah, that's 17, so that sounds like it tracks. So, yeah, that's what we've got so far. If you know more evidence about either his political affiliations or more evidence as to why the media or other people are jumping to conclusions about his affiliations without actually having evidence to back it up, please go ahead and let me know. It doesn't matter whether you believe it yourself or whether it's something you've heard from somewhere else. Let's try to steelman this argument. And for those who don't know, steelman basically means that you try to take a certain position, and instead of critiquing it by pulling up the weakest points, you critique it by trying to pull up the strongest points. You try to make a certain case as strong as you possibly can, and then you see if it holds up. You critique it after you build it up as strong as you can. So, yeah. Keep learning with me. Let's figure this out together. I appreciate your comments, your insights, your knowledge, and anything you can do to help support this channel would be really great. If you think that the content I'm making is worthwhile, please consider helping me out in the algorithms by subscribing, by liking, by leaving a comment. Until then, have a good one, and thank you for joining me.